Welcome back to the Banderpod, the mysterious and masterful podcast of Bandersnatch Books. We are a small press publisher of treasures found off the beaten path for lovers of all that is good, true, and beautiful. I'm Annie Beth Donahue, and today I'm talking with Katherine Ladny Mitchell about why mysteries make good stories. Katie Mitchell, welcome to the Banderpod.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I'm very excited about this conversation because I am a mystery lover myself. But before we get into the nuts and bolts, tell us a little about yourself and your background. Who are you?
Well, right now I feel like a Jane of all trades. I have five wonderful children that I homeschooled for about 13 years. And 3 years ago, my husband and all of our kids moved to the country. And so when I actually submitted my murder mystery and wanted to discuss it with the publishers at Bandersnatch, 5 minutes before our interview on Zoom, I had to go get my goats out of the street. So juggling a little bit of a circus, but it's been a wonderful way of life and just learning new things as an adult. So we have chickens and emus and ducks and geese and a cow and lots of ornery goats and even more ornery pigs. And when I am not writing murder mysteries or other snarky things, I am giving homestead tours and teaching homestead skill workshops and also doing writing workshops as well.
That's really cool. I was going to say, do you consider yourself a homesteader?
You know, there's a lot of imposter syndrome with both writers and homesteaders. We still go to the grocery store once a week, but I am writing something that defines a homesteader as somebody who takes personal pride in buying chicken feed instead of eggs, and I feel like that's where I live. We are not replacing everything that we eat with our homestead, but we are enjoying the relationships and the interrelationships between the animals and the plants and enjoying what doesn't die in the garden and then eggs and fresh milk and things like that. I feel like for the people who are really into homesteading, like they are off grid and probably in the wilderness and raising all of their food, that's not quite us. We really love being just outside of the city, so we get the best of both worlds. But as far as the daily chores, we're doing a lot of the same things that somebody who's really into homesteading does. And I think the main difference between a homesteader and a farmer is that we don't own a tractor.
Yeah, that's very similar to how it is over here as well. We have some animals, we benefit from some gardens, and we also have electricity and don't use solar panels. So, but we do have a tractor. It's for mowing the grass. The goats mow pastures, but not all the grass. So,
Gotcha.
so you alluded to this a little bit in your conversation just now, but how are you connected to Bandersnatch Books?
So that is a story. A long time ago, and when I say long time, I mean probably about 10 years ago, I wrote a murder mystery because I was getting frustrated. My husband and I love to unwind by watching cozy murder mystery shows, and we're also fans of the works of Dorothy Sayers. But we were running out of shows, basically, because almost invariably there would be an episode just legitimizing non-biblical relationships between people. And we also would just run into like character pet peeves where maybe the detective, instead of revealing truth, would actually wind up liking the murderer in some way and say, "Oh, you had a great reason for killing that jerk, so we just won't tell the police about you at all." And then the worst one, when you turn your detective into this vigilante justice person. They take justice in their own hands and then they become a murderer themselves. And those just really rubbed me the wrong way. So I got mad. And when you get mad, one of the best things you can do is write a book. So after I wrote that murder mystery, I submitted to lots of literary agents and eventually I got one. But she was unable to find a publisher for me at the time. So after a year of trying, and I wrote a second murder mystery during that time, we just amicably parted ways, and she actually went to a completely different agency. And I think at the time it was a disappointment, but I later really viewed it as God's protection, because then I saw some blog posts about that particular publishing agency getting into legal trouble for not paying their authors.
Ooh.
And I think God really spared me from that. So I shelved the murder mysteries and then just worked on other projects. And I actually submitted a sci-fi project to Bandersnatch. And then on a whim, just thought, hey, I'll also submit my murder mysteries. You guys were not asking to have murder mysteries, but I figured, hey, at least this shows that I am versatile and I can, complete projects on time. And then lo and behold, it was the murder mysteries that you guys wound up enjoying more than the sci-fi. So here we are. And I am just so thankful that this story is finally getting shared with the world.
That's right. I can remember getting your submissions in. We started reading and we're like, oh, this is good. This is really good.
Very grateful to have a voice.
Yes. And we do pay you.
Yes.
We may not be a large publisher, but we do pay people. Yeah, so we were very excited to be able to release that first mystery this year. And if you've noticed, it says Pen and Paintbrush Mysteries on the cover, which means we've got more good stuff coming. So, Katie, if you think about it, especially murder mysteries, right? Like that's bad. It's a bad thing for someone to be murdered. It's a bad thing for things to be stolen. But I have heard you defend the mystery genre as part of the good, true, and beautiful. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that here.
No, I love murder mysteries. And the reason that I find them so encouraging is that at the end of the day, no matter how clever the bad guy has been, murder mysteries remind us that evil cannot hide forever. And that is reflective of the future laid out in scripture, that we do live in a world where bad things happen to good people. And we do live in a world where sometimes things get broken and they stay broken. And then scripture tells us that's not the end of the story. At the end of the story, everybody and everything is going to have to answer to their creator. And he is going to set all things right at that point. And so if you kind of boil that big idea down into a microcosm of a single murder mystery or any, there are other heist mysteries too.
Right, right.
But I think they just give us like a little Polaroid of the big picture ending for all of human history that we are looking forward to and can actually have great hope in. And so with my murder mysteries, yes, they do include murder. Yes, there are some inappropriate relationships, but the thing that I've really tried to do in mine is that I want to call the bad things bad. And the problem that I've been running into with certain books, that they will call things that are bad actually good or not a big deal. It's not a big deal to fudge the truth. It's like, no, it's actually a really big deal. And the whole murder mystery genre is supposed to show the difference between truth and falsehood. I mean, that's what the genre is for. And the whole fun of a murder mystery is trying to figure out the truth from the clues that the author gives to the reader. So in that sense, I think that murder mysteries are also more uniquely interactive as an author-reader experience. They invite you to be figuring things out along with the detective. And I find that dynamic charming.
Yeah, it's fun.
It is. And even if you don't get it right, then it's kind of like a magic trick at the end where they're like, oh, this is how it really happened. And so for me, I love the surprise. I love the encouragement. And what I'm trying to do in my series is to really highlight the good is good and also show evil for what it is.
Yeah, I love that. Carrie has also spoken on this in the past. She had a Hutchmoot session one time titled Sleuths and Spaceships. So we're not going to talk about the spaceships part. But I did have some ideas that she had presented in that session. And I wanted to give you some of the quotes and then get your take on what she had said. So one of the things Carrie mentioned was, There's nearly always some kind of community formed at the beginning of a detective novel. Whether the crime takes place on a family estate, or on a train full of passengers, or an Oxford common room, some kind of community either exists beforehand or is formed right at the beginning of the story. With the crime, the bonds of trust in that community are broken, and there are doubts and suspicions that are strewn about, and it's only when the murderer is brought to justice that the community can be restored to a semblance of harmony. And I was hoping that you might be able to take that and share with us how that, I mean, that happens in your book, right?
It does. It does. And I think that's a really good observation that Carrie made because I can't think of a single, so many murder mysteries. It's even the crime solving brilliant detective always has a sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
Even solving the crime is a community or a communal endeavor. And of course, that's just another beautiful thing about murder mysteries. You have all this opportunity not only to say things about truth, but also to say things about people and how people depend on one another. As they're asking people for clues and like, where were you? And all of that, and then trying to sort through the red herrings and the truth. And even to have somebody to bounce things between each other. So obviously, Sherlock Holmes and Watson, that's one of the biggest, sleuth duos. It's mostly Sherlock, but often he will feed off of something that Watson inadvertently does, and that will trigger a new thought and help Sherlock actually become the detective that he needs to be. And you also have this dynamic with Poirot and Hastings, and also with Lord Peter Wimsey, and Buntner is his valet, and usually will say something or ask something, and that will just start this whole new train of thought. And when Lord Peter Wimsey follows that up, Buntner is also doing a lot of legwork for him, taking photographs or delivering things for him. They're working together as a team, even if your main focus is just on the primary detective. But there's this partnership idea. And I definitely talk about that with my own book. With my protagonist, she is a sister and she's a writer, but she's a recovering hard news reporter. And that when I was doing research for my murder mystery, I realized that there's a really high percentage of news reporters and emergency medical personnel, basically the people who show up on the scene of a crime before everything is tidied up. And that can be a lot to deal with if you're seeing these violent scenes just over and over and over again. And there's actually a high percentage of people who work in these fields who have PTSD or have anxiety. And I thought that would be a realistic thing to give as a problem that my character needs to solve. And so you have her editor who's forcing her to cover this violent thing. And she's like, that I'm still on anti-anxiety medication. You know this, right? And he's like, well, pop a pill and go to it. He's not very sensitive. But then you also have the counterbalance of the protagonist's sister. So Kathy is the main detective, and then her younger sister, who is an artist, she has a different gift set, and she's very humorous. And so while Kathy is trying to figure out what's what and what's not, she has the ability to bounce those ideas off her sister. And then when she's feeling just kind of down in a rut, her sister's able to kind of help pick her up and get her out of that. So yeah, lots of community building, and I'm hoping to extend a lot of those community relationships around my detective through each book of the series. So you have the community where the crime is committed, and that community will shift. Mm-hmm. But I do like the familiarity and the long picture where you can develop characters book by book. Because some murder mysteries will go with more of like a Poirot sort of deal where every book is a different story, but your detective is basically the same character in each story. Mm-hmm. There's not a whole lot of change with the character, but then you might have a series like Castle, where characters are actually developing a romantic relationship over the course of 30 episodes. And so I want to do a similar thing with that with my books, kind of develop my characters over the long haul, but get also the instant gratification of a solved murder mystery with each novel.
Yeah, like in your book, there are two communities really. There's what you're just talking about now. You've got your detective and their sidekick. So you've got Kathy and Liz who are working together. They're sisters. And you've got the larger thespian community where the actual murder mystery takes place. And so both of those communities end up being disrupted because obviously the thespian community is disrupted from the murder. And then you've got your two main characters who end up, they're working together, but they have to work through things, right? That it's not easy to solve a mystery together.
No, it is not. And, one is the older sister, one is the younger sister, and those dynamics of protection and risk taking, those come into play in the book too. So the main shtick of the pen and paintbrush mysteries, and why it's even called that in the first place, is that Kathy is the wordsmith. She is literally a journalist, and she also has an uncanny memory of anything that she reads and any words that she hears. So she's an auditory learner and just very, very word focused. So she is the pen. But Liz is the opposite. Liz is an art student and she is all about the visual, and she notices tiny details. She notices shades of colors that Kathy doesn't even know, the names of. So they have to use their different strengths together in order to solve these crimes. And at the same time, they will wear different hats for each other. And what I mean by that is Kathy is the older sister, yes, and usually she has the more responsible demeanor and is trying to protect her sister. But when Kathy has an anxiety attack, Kathy is the one who needs help then. And it's her younger sister who is then picking her up and having kind of different dynamics there, which I've seen, play out just in my own relationship with my own sister. It rings more true than if I just had just a detective who never changes and is the same in every single book. I think it's more fun to reflect more of the human experience, because sometimes you have really great days and you feel like taking on the world, and other days you just want to, stay in bed and eat bonbons, and you need somebody to kind of help pull you out of that. And so anyway, I enjoy the community. And while we're talking about community, one of the characters that I introduce in the first book and who will be making repeated appearances through the next novels is my mentor character, who is a pastor. And one of the things that I like playing with is this idea that pastors are real people, and also pastors really are good. I think we live in an age where people are very cynical about anyone in authority at all, and especially people who are in any sort of spiritual institution, just because there have been so many scandals and everything. And it's very often that I feel like Christians and the church and stuff kind of get made fun of in either literature, certainly in cinema, and in TV series. And so I wanted to introduce this character as not just being a stodgy guy in a stiff collar who you can't relate to, but it's like, what if we had like a Christian character who's a good guy, like a genuinely good guy, and that we're not taking cheap shots at the faith and just making fun of everything he does, because I feel like that is the route that a lot of mysteries go. So that was another aspect of the community in my books that I wanted to kind of correct from what I was seeing elsewhere.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to say Kathy seems to be going through some spiritual growth as well.
Yes. So the way that Kathy and Liz start is that they were raised in a Christian household, but they're adults now, and no one's making them go to church. Nobody's making them really do anything. And so they're focusing on their career and Kathy's side, and also just on school with Liz's side. And it's not so much that they're antagonistic, but they have doubts about their Christian upbringing. And it's actually kind of fun. In the third book of the series, the crime actually takes place in a church. And that'll be the way to get my girls into church if there's a murder mystery to solve in it. But in the beginning, when Kathy first interacts with my pastor character, she is a little cynical and a little abrasive at first, and then just kind of checks herself and she's like, I need to treat this person as a person. And they actually connect over a cup of tea, of all things, and build a friendship that will eventually be instrumental in changing Kathy's view of the faith that she grew up in and help her to internalize it. But that's a few books away.
This is all very hero's journey, and there's always a mentor. That's like the Yoda of the novel, the story structure. And that, I mean, that's what makes a good story. And we see that in Not to Be.
I would agree. I would agree. I love the hero's journey. Absolutely love it. And I would also just add that sometimes switching up those character hats again can be a fun way to go about it from a just to make it a little bit more dynamic. Because if every story had the same exact, always the same way presented order with always the same way presented characters, it might come across as trite. And I wouldn't say that this is original because it's not. There's nothing new under the sun. But you can have fun with things. You can be creative and make that classic structure still new and exciting. And the reason that we even have the hero's journey through all the cultures and everything is because it really does resonate with the human soul. And I think God put that in us for a reason, because if you follow the 12 steps of the hero's journey, it's like, oh, there's the gospel.
Yeah. I have another quote Angela Stanford wrote. In a modern world that increasingly denies there is any order or real virtues like truth and justice, the detective story creates a longing in us for the very things our culture rebels against. We hate this chaos created by the dead body, and we desperately want to see the truth revealed and justice enacted. We want to see the good guys rewarded and the bad guys punished. Our souls cry out for order to be restored.
I would 100% agree. That's a very good quote.
So, besides Dorothy Sayers, what other mystery authors inspired you?
Well, my first one, take this with a grain of salt. In 10th grade, my English teacher gave an assignment. She gave us a list of authors, and this was the most brilliant assignment I have ever been given. She said, I want you to choose an author, and I want you to read a novel by that author. And then I want you to read literary criticism of that author and then use your novel that you read to either agree or disagree and support whether you agree with the critics or not. And I chose Agatha Christie, and I chose And Then There Were None, which is also sometimes goes by the name of 10 Little Indians. And that was really my first real deep dive into the murder mystery genre. That said, now that I have read several others, Agatha Christie breaks the rules sometimes. And sometimes I think that it's brilliant. But with her murder mysteries, I feel like she gives everybody means, motive, and opportunity, and that really she could kind of make a case that anybody could have done the murder. And so I can never guess hers. But another author that I really enjoy besides Dorothy Sayers would be Alexander McCall Smith, who wrote the #1 Ladies Detective Agency series, which is set in Botswana. I thought he did an amazing job capturing the culture of that African country, just in the way the characters speak to one another. And he does do a long character arc between his characters from book to book to book to book. And I really like that. He has a good, tight community with his detective and the sidekick and the love interest that you also see develop over time. So I really enjoy his work. And then with Dorothy Sayers, I really liked her Whose Body and Strong Poison. I think those are the two favorites that I've read from her. And again, she did such a ridiculous amount of research. Dorothy Sayers is kind of like the mother of mystery to me, and she actually had a detective club of murder mystery writers, and they set rules that they were going to use in their work. And Agatha Christie was a member of that club. So,
I did not know that. That's very interesting. All right. I don't know if you remember this or not. I remember it, but I don't remember when I asked you the question. But I had also asked you a question about why you liked mysteries a long time ago. And I wanted to end with a quote from yourself. Katie said, "What I love about mysteries is that they remind us no matter how clever the adversary is, evil cannot hide forever." And that, my friends, is a truth worth being reminded of. All right, we do this little thing at the end of our interviews called popcorn questions.
okay.
All right, who is your favorite mystery writer?
Probably Alexander McCall Smith.
What's your favorite mystery book?
Probably Whose Body.
What's your favorite farm animal?
Oh, my goat Winifred. She's a Nubian and she's a milk goat and just very sweet.
Nubians are very sweet. Yes. And are you baking anything for fall?
So the short answer is not really, but I did have a scone baking business for a little while and it kind of burnt me out on baking. So my daughters bake.
Yes, I remember you saying, because there are scones in your book, that you had extensive scone experience. So,
And I was actually really, really impressed that there were so many people in the beta reader group who apparently like eat scones a lot and furthermore know how to prepare them correctly. So when they were commenting on some of my word choices for how to bake scones.
that was pretty funny. All right, final question. Do emus bite?
No, I would say they investigate with their beaks, which is very different. They when I think of something biting, I think of it being in an aggressive or self-protective way. My emus just want to check out the bling that you're wearing on your wrist or around your neck, and they do not their hands are too small. So so they use their mouths just to investigate.
We've had donkeys like that before too. You got to watch out for your phone in your pocket.
Uh-huh. Yeah. They really like the shiny things.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us today, Katie. If you, dear listener, have not yet read Not to Be, you can find it everywhere Bandersnatch books are sold, preferably our website. And we know you're going to love it. So remember, you have more books in the series to look forward to in the future. May you find bookish treasures in your wanderings off the beaten path. Thanks for listening in to our conversation today on the Banderpod. We hope you'll check out our full catalog at bandersnatchbooks.com. The Banderpod is produced by Rachel S. Donahue, A.B. Donahue, and Carolyn Claire Givens. Audio engineering by S.D.G. Morgan. Artwork by Evelyn Warnamundi. Many thanks to our friend Chris Slayton of Son of Laughter for our theme song, Cricket in a Jar. Find links and more in the show notes.